With the help of Hashem, we are learning Taanis Daf Chai, Daf Yud Ches. We left off on Daf Yud Zayin, Amid Beis, 10 lines before the bottom of the Amid. The Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah spoke about Megillas Taanis. So in that Sefer, in that Megillah, that recorded all of the minor Yom Tovim that took place during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, and the Chachamim decided to make those days into minor Yom Tovim, which means not only may you not fast on that day, may you also not eulogize someone who passed away on that day. But the Mishnah then, let's go into that detail, differentiated between how is that Yom Tov recorded in Megillas Taanis. If the words that are used in this Megillah is the loyla mispat, one shall not even eulogize, which is emphasizing that that day was considered relatively a greater holiday from these minor holidays. So the Mishnah spoke a machlekes between the Tanach, and as we will discover today, the Tanach is Rabbi Meir versus Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir holds, the Tanach holds, that when it says the loyla mispat, it means that not only may you not eulogize someone on that minor holiday, but lefanov, even the day prior, is also asr. On the other hand, the day post the minor holiday, la'achrav, there you are allowed to eulogize. Rabbi Yossi, which always is one notch more chamur. More chamur means he's more stringent in what we may not do to hamper, to dampen the holiday. Rabbi Yossi holds that lefanov ula achrav asr. If the Mishnah says the word that is used in Megillas Taanis regarding the minor holiday is only the loyli his'anoah, which means one may not fast, so that the Tanach again, which is Rabbi Meir holds lefanov ula achrav mutar, only on that day may one not fast, but a day prior and a day post one is allowed to fast. And Rabbi Yossi again is one notch more chamur. He holds lefanov asr. Day prior is also prohibited to fast, and la'achrav is going to be mutter. This detail is important to bear in mind to appreciate the beginning of today's sugya, because what we started yesterday was we learned two other minor holidays, which were not actually one-day holidays. They were a bunch of days together that are a holiday. We learned about the Yom Tov that begins Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and it goes till and including the 8th of Nisan. During those days, we had a debate with the Tzedukim. They wanted to argue based on words in the Chumash that one should be allowed to bring the Korban Tamid from an individual. That means that one person should have the right to donate a Korban, and the Kohanim can bring it on behalf of everyone. But they did not accept the emes, which is that all of the Korbanos Tzibur must come from communal funds. And when we won that debate, which took that 8-day period, they established these 8 days is a Yom Tov. The Brisa that we learned yesterday spoke about another group of days that are recorded in the Megillas Taanis as a minor holiday, but not day, but group of days from the 8th, Nachamal, the 8th of Nisan, until the end of the Moyed, until the end of Yom Tov, which means until the end of the holiday of Pesach. During those many days, there was a debate. This debate is actually recorded in much detail, in great detail, in Menachas Samachei, where by Susim, part of the same group, by Susim, Tzedukim, these are names of two people that they were the breakaway. They argued that when the Torah says that the Omer has to be brought Mimachras HaShabbos, it must be taken literally. Mimachras HaShabbos, Shabbos in the Torah means Shabbos. Mimachras HaShabbos, the day after Shabbos, means Sunday. So they argued wrongfully that the Omer is always brought only on Sunday. Now, of course, if Pesach is on Shabbos, the first day Pesach, then Taka Sunday. But no matter when the first day of Pesach is, they argued the Omer is going to be brought on the closest Sunday, and that's the meaning of Mimachras HaShabbos, and that the reason why they were arguing that is because they came to a conclusion that God, from his compassion, wants us to have at least once a year a 2-day Yom Tov. Now we, Mechutz La'aretz, we're used to it. Many people sadly say, 2 days Yom Tov, 3 days Yom Tov. No, they were looking forward to it. 1 day Yom Tov is before you blink your eye, the Yom Tov is over. Whenever the Omer is brought on that same weekday, Shavuos is going to fall out. And we debated with them. And when we won that debate, and again, why did we have to win the debate? Because sadly, during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, there were Kohanim that were not honest whose group they belonged to. They claimed that they were faithful to the oral Torah. In their hearts, they were faithful to the Tzedukim. And they purposefully, they were like an agent. They were like a spy. They were working in the Beis HaMikdash, and they wanted to do what the Tzedukim held. So it's very advantageous when they also will subscribe to the truth. So we don't have to be concerned about that practice in the Beis HaMikdash. As we learned previously, remember that instead of pouring the waters, they didn't pour the water once. We didn't want to have people that are saying that they are frum when they're not frum. So these are days of holidays. Now, why are we bringing it down? The whole daf today, it's going to be ready as a hachana to the next chapter. The next chapter is Mamish Sipur Tzadikim. The next chapter is all of the stories that many of us grew up in is going to be written in the next chapter. We're going to have a lot of stories today, but in the context of these minor holidays, basically we're going to chazer the story that we had in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, the Yom Tov of the 28th day of Adar. We're going to have the Yom Tov of Nikanor, not Nikanor, the one that we learned in Yuma, the miracle with the gates in the Beis HaMikdash. No, Nikanor was a Rasha, the one that we're going to learn about today, that he had a downfall. We're going to learn about another minor Yom Tov called Yom Turiyanus. We're going to learn a lot about the minor Yom Tovim, but the whole daf will have one thing, that all of these days, until when Batla Megillas Taanis, until the Churban Beis HaMikdash, and not only was one not allowed to fast nor eulogize on that day, it affected prior and post, but we always have this machlokes. Rab Meir, which is the Tanach of the Mishnah, is more, says it only if it says the Leila Mispat, don't even eulogize, Lefan of Mutar, Lefan of Asur, Ula Achar of Mutar. Rabbi Yossi takes it a notch up. If it says not to eulogize, not before nor after. If it only says not to fast, Rabbi Meir holds it doesn't affect anything. And Rabbi Yossi says it does affect the day prior. If you remember this detail, then we're going to go through the whole daf today, and we're going to try to figure out other statements, whether it's following Rabbi Yossi, whether it's following Rabbi Meir. We're going to find out who the halach is like. We're going to actually learn today that they found later in Ebraisa a third Tana, which is the most lenient. Lenient means that he held that all of these minor holidays, Bechlal, never affected prior or post. Bechlal did not subscribe, not lefan of that day is a holiday, but prior or post, if you want, you can fast. If you want, you can eulogize, etc. Okay. So, Chavra, 10 lines before the bottom of the Amid, we just reviewed the Braisa that spoke out the 2 Yom Tovim from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 8th, including the 8th, right? The day that we fixed the Talmud, that it has to come from communal funds, simple. And then the other Yom Tov, written in Megillas Taanis, that began on the 8th of Nisan. Why 8th twice? We'll see today. From the 8th until the end, the last day of Yom Tov, the last day of Pesach, these are the days, again, minor Yom Tov, because we won the debate. They acquiesced. They were moida that we're right, that Shabbos means Yom Tov. The Machras HaShabbos in this context means the Omer is brought the day after Yom Tov, the day after the first day of Yom Tov.
Following the minor Shabbos, minor Yom Tov, what happens other than not eulogizing and not?
So David is asking what else happens halachically. I would say we don't say Tachman. In other words, it's a day that we celebrate. Let me say what David is saying in different words. The Iker is Chassan min HaSefer. A minor Yom Tov means that it's a day that we would remember the story, that we would thank Hashem. Hasidim would make a fabrengen. Zicher, we want to remember the miracle. And now what? Don't say Tachman. That would be in today's words. There was, don't fast. People don't fast today. In Lubavitch, we never eulogize. So it's not that, but don't fast and don't even eulogize. And not even the day before. And according to Rabbi Yossi, not even the day after. Okay. It's you know what? It's the third. It's down in the third wide lines. This is the master. This is the Braisa. That's mamash words of Megillas Taanis. Mereish Yarcha de Nisan, from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, including Rosh Chodesh Nisan, until the 8th of Nisan, at Temanya Bay. What happened was that Itoikam Temida, we established from whose funds should the Talmud be brought. And here we have these words. Not don't fast. A stronger word, a greater, relatively minor holiday. The Leila Mispat. Okay. Why did the Megillas Taanis even have to write Rosh Chodesh Nisan listen, I know that the fact is that debate began Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But Rosh Chodesh is a Yom Tov any days. If you want to say, Lamay Nafkamina, that we don't say, we don't eulogize. We don't eulogize Rosh Chodesh regardless. We don't fast on Rosh Chodesh regardless. Lema, the Braisa should only have written Mitrei ben Nisan. But for Rosh Chodesh Gufa Yom Tov, and therefore it's anyways Asur. Guys, we're not allowed, we don't eulogize today on Rosh Chodesh. We don't fast on Rosh Chodesh. Even a Hassan who gets mad, a Hassan Kala, they don't fast on Rosh Chodesh. Some people have a minig, they fast the day prior. Answers the Gemara Amarav. Now you'll see why this is brought down over here. Because don't forget, Chevra, we have in our Mishnah that these Yomim Tovim also affect prior and post. Again, Tanakama, Rabbi Yosi. Rosh Chodesh doesn't affect prior post. Answers the Gemara Amarav. No, it's not a question. It's needed. Dafka, because they wrote the first day of Nisan, now we know you may not even eulogize the day prior. Whoa. And if you would not have written it in Megillas Taanis, the kasha is based on the premise that if every minor holiday affects days prior, so Rosh Chodesh, the biblical Rosh Chodesh, should also affect the day prior. So that's the whole point. Says the Gemara, that's the whole point. That biblical Yomim Tovim, whether we call them major Yomim Tovim or a biblical minor Yom Tov, let's call that Rosh Chodesh, does not affect the days prior and post. Rosh Chodesh, dafke, because it's a de'oiraisahu, it's from God, it's from God's light. Therefore, there is the rule, the biblical Yomim Tovim don't need to be strengthened. So we're not concerned that if we're not going to begin something the day prior, we're not going to celebrate the day proper. No. And the Rabbanans, it's called Divrei Soifrim. That's a whole other shmuz to understand what's the Rabbanan, what's Divrei Soifrim. Everything is meduyak. Divrei Soifrim tzrichem chizuk. The Tanya, as we learned, Hayomim ha'ela haksuvim Megillas Taanis lifneim ula achareim asurim. This sounds like Rabbi Yosi, right? Shabbos is v'yomim toivim hein asurim. But you can't fast on Shabbos. Can't eulogize on Shabbos. Can't eulogize on Yom Tov. Shabbos we don't bury, but on Yom Tov we bury, right? We learned that. And what's the logic? So the Gemara explains that dafke, because halalu divrei Torah, anything that's enacted by God, written in the Torah, the rule is divrei Torah ein tzrichim chizuk. They don't need to be strengthened; they are standing strong. But halalu divrei soifrim, something that was enacted by the sages. The word soifrim has two meanings. Sofer means a scribe, and Sofer means those who count. Ezra HaSofer means the one who counted the letters in Tanach. Now, next question. Omar Mar, 3 lines from the bottom. What was the second Yom Tov that we learned about at the end of yesterday's shiur? Mitemanya, from the 8th day ad Soif Moyada until the end of Pesach. Itoisav, we established Chagod de Shavuot, the weekday of the Yom Tov of Shavuos. In other words, they always wanted to have it on Sunday because of their erroneous pshat b'machras HaShabbos, and we won the debate, so they agreed that Shavuos will always be the 50th day from the Omer, and the Omer is brought the day after the first day of Pesach. Shabbos can mean Yom Tov. Parenthetically, our minig Chabad, when we make a Mishaberach on Yom Tov, we say Shabbos Imalizoik. And just to know what it means over there, Shabbos Imalizoik that we say doesn't mean that Shabbos. First of all, here you see Yom Tov can also be called Shabbos. Shabbos means we rest from crying out. Because the rule, with exceptions, the rule is that on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, we don't ask Hashem for personal needs. That's why we don't have an 18 Amida prayer. We take out all the middle ones. Now, there are exceptions. Actually, next payday, tomorrow, the next year, will begin of such calamities that we cry out on Shabbos. That's the anomaly. That's the chiddush. That's the exception. Anyways, go back over here. Here again, not the loyla isana, the loyla mispat. What does it mean, the loyla mispat? Guys, remember, according to the Tanakh of Meir, it means lefanav asur, chevra, but la'achrav mutar. According to Rabbi Yosi, whenever it says in Megillas Taanis, the loy lemispad, lefanav ula achrav asur. Now, here again, Why did the Braisa B'chlal have to write about celebrating? I get it, the 8th of Nisan, the 9th of Nisan, these are weekdays. So we made it into a Yom Tov. But from the 15th of Nisan until the end of Pesach, anyways, it's Yom Tov.
Why the 8th of Nisan?
That's when the debate began. It's that story. It was a back and forth. It wasn't a one-time thing. So when we won, many Yom Tovim are that way. When the Yom Tov was established, it was during the period of the miracle. Okay. Again, Lama Liyatzayf Mayed. Lema the Braisa and Megillas Taanis only should have written Ad Hamoyed, the last line in Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis, until Pesach. We know that the debate ended only at the end of Pesach. But anyways, it's a Yom Tov. Umoyed Gufa, Nama Yom Tov Uva Aser. Now, guys, you see, it's such a good, it's a setup. What are we trying to point out? The Loila Mispat, even Rab Meir holds, it goes Lefanov. So the answer we gave before, that the reason why they wrote Rosh Chodesh is to include the day before, doesn't clarify who's the author of this Braisa. Now here, the answer is going to have to go for the day after. The day after is only Rabbi Yossi. This is the way the Gemara is going to point out that the author of this Braisa has to be Rabbi Yossi, and we're going to come with a kasha with that. Oh, so the Gemara says, Amarav Papa, I know the answer. In other words, just like we quoted from Rav, regarding the first Yom Tov from Rosh Chodesh until the 8th. What did Rav say? Why did they have to write Rosh Chodesh? Loi nitzracha chevradaf yudches elo le'eser yoim shelafanov. That's why they wrote the date down, because it has a halachic consequence. Says Rav Papa, must be that why did the Megillas Taanis record the Yom Tov of Pesach? Loi nitzracha elo. Second narrow line, le'eser yoim shela'achrov. Says the Gemara, aha, that's the whole buildup. I got you. If the Braisa is writing a date to include the Yom Shel Achrab, that's already subject to the Machlokes in our Mishnah. The Tanakama, which we know is Rav Meir, as we'll see today, doesn't hold, even where it says don't eulogize, it doesn't affect the day after. So therefore it must mean Kiman Kirab Yosi. The Amar, when it says the Loila Mispat, Bein Lefanov, Bein La'achrav Asur, Bamba Kasha. Now we have a question. What's the question?
In the 22nd of Nisan is not the Raisa?
It's Doiraisa because it's Shvi Shal Pesach.
It is the Raisa,
but Shvi Shal Pesach, since Divrei Torah don't need Chizuk, Isru Chag is a day which, according to our sugya, you can fast on it and you can eulogize. And because of this miracle, they don't want you to do it even on the day after. Here's the problem. And Chavre, we learned this in Rosh Hashanah. It's stories. So we learned in Rosh Hashanah, we're going to repeat the whole story, that there was a miracle that happened on the 28th day of Adar. Now, like this, guys. If we would not subscribe to the day after, then the Yom Tov of the 28th day of Adar doesn't affect the 29th. But now that we established that Megillas Taanis is following Rabbi Yossi, who holds that any day written in Megillas Taanis also affects the day after. If it says the Loila Mispat, we're going to read again the Yom Tov of the 28th of Adar, the Loila Mispat. The 29th, my friends, is Erev Rosh Chodesh. Now we're trapped, because let's go back to the first thing. Why did they write from the Rosh Chodesh until the 8th? To get the day prior. The day prior, Rosh Chodesh, is also the day after the 28th. So it's not needed. It's Gavaldik. So say the Gemara, once the third line, the 29th day of Adar, we began today's share pointing out that they wrote Rosh Chodesh Nisan, not for Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, you can't fast on Rosh Chodesh, you can't eulogize on Rosh Chodesh. It's only to chap, to include the day prior. Now, guys, I know the answer we'll see is clear. The day prior to Rosh Chodesh doesn't always have to be the 29th, but that's normally the way it is. That's normally the way it is. That other Hasamach Lenisan, we had this whole sugya. Does it have 29 days? Does it have 30 days? Don't B'chlal get confused with nowadays. We already spoke that out on Rosh Hashanah. Nowadays, we have a 2 days Rosh Chodesh. The first day of Rosh Chodesh is the 30th. It's almost like a stira. If it's Rosh Chodesh, it's not the 30th. In those days, it didn't work that way. There was 1 day Rosh Chodesh. Either the prior month had 29 days or it had 30 days. The question is based on the fact that in vast majority of cases, other Hasamach Lenisan was chaser. So the day before Aleph was the 29th. The 29th, paper clay, you appreciate what's going on over here. If we would not go with Rabbi Yossi, then this is not a kasha. If it's not Rabbi Yossi, if it would only be Rav Meir holds also that it catches the day prior. Rav Meir does not subscribe to the day post. According to Rav Meir, when there's a Yom Tov, the 28th of Adar, it does not affect the 29th. But now that you said that, why are we writing Pesach? Don't write Pesach, write from the 8th until Pesach. You're writing until the end of Pesach, the day afterwards. Azoy, Rabbi Yossi. Anyways, the 29th is a Yom Tov enough that you may not fast. The Tanya says what happened on the 28th, the Esrim B'Tamya Bey, on the 28th of Adar. The Jewish people received good news. What's the good news? So that they will not be removed, not from Torah study. Doiraisa also means not removed from Torah observance. What happened over there? And here, very importantly, just to add another detail, even Rabbi Yossi holds that if Megillas Taanis only writes the words "Deloy lehis ana," it doesn't chap the day post. So the Bach points out that no, you have to add the words "Deloy lemispat." Deloy lemispat was written regarding the 28th of Adar. And again, now that we established that it goes according to Rabbi Yossi, the Loila Mispad means if it says 28 is a holiday, you know what that means? You cannot make, it affects the 29th. You can't fast on the 29th. So it's already covered. Again, we're back to the first kasha. We don't need Rosh Chodesh. But what happened over there? There was a time that a decree was made against the Jewish people. They made 3 takonas. Remember, we had this in Me'ilah. The Romans, they thought to go ahead and they're going to say we can't practice any of Yiddishkeit. No one will give in. They're going to only pick a few mitzvahs. Maybe that's the way people will say. They are allowing other things, but they knew which mitzvahs to pick on. They picked the 3 mitzvahs. We spoke this out on Rosh Hashanah that makes us distinct from the goyim. From all of the mitzvahs, where do we see that we are ubanu b'charta? Torah learning. Why? Because it's asur for us to teach a goy Torah. Many details about that. And it's asur on a goy to learn Torah. Shabbos, goy sheshavas, chayav misa. Unlike nach l'shitas Rambam, that if goyim keep other mitzvahs, they get some reward. The Rambam holds that they can keep mitzvahs optionally. Not Shabbos, not learning Torah. And then just to know circumcision, a goy can circumcise himself. But how many times did we learn together that if a person says, for example, I'm making a vow not to benefit from the circumcised ones, I'm making a nether from the nimoilim or from the mulim. So we learned in a Mishnah, it doesn't mean people who are actually circumcised. It means from a Jewish person. Or if a person says, I'm making a nether not to have hana'ah from arelim, from people who have an odol, it means from non-Jews. And if there's a non-Jew that has a physical bris milah, I may not have anah from him. It's milah and Shabbos and Torah learning makes us distinct. So they went ahead and they said, "Shelo ya'asku b'Torah, v'shelo yimoilu es b'neim, and v'sheyechalalu Shabbosos." So what did we do? Ma asa Yehuda ben Shamua, who was the leading Tana of that time in that place, and his colleagues, they went and they got advice from a Roman noble woman. So this is very important to learn. In other words, we believe in God, we rely on God, but there's something that's on us. And you got to use seichel. So you have to understand the psychology of your enemy. So they got advice from her. She was someone who was familiar with the legislative branch, with the Congress members, with the Senate members of the Romans at the time. And Amro Lahem, and what she told him is that if the only way they will listen to you is that if you, how do they say here in America? No justice, no peace. Peaceful demonstrations, but make demonstrations at night. Disturb their sleep. So they should want to resolve this. So what did she say? Imdu, get up. V'havginu balayla, make a havgana, make a protest at night. Peacefully, but the people on the other inside their homes won't sleep. Now, they chachamim, they did a lot more than that. So first of all, they got from her the eitzah when to make the protest. Amru, I shamayim, like, oh heavens, are we not brothers? Now the Romans are the descendants of Esav. Now, Torah learning, Yaakov was Ishtam. Esav was not an Ishtam, but at least you remember from Esav that the brother of Esav, we learned Torah. You can't tell us not to learn Torah. Loi b'nei av echad anachnu. Are we not the son of the same father? Who's the same father, Chevra? Yitzchak. What was unique about Yitzchak? Yitzchak was the first Yid that had a bris when he was 8 days old. We're not even evoking Avraham Avinu because he had a bris when he was 99 years old. So do it for your Zayden. Loi b'nei aim achas anachnu. Who's the aim of Esav and Yaakov? Rivka. What was unique about Rivka? Shabbos. We learn in Chumash, Vayinachem Yitzchak Achrei Imoy, that all of the miracles that happened, which includes that the Neder Shabbos Kodesh, that Rivka Imenu lit, miraculously, like by Chanukah, they remained alight the whole week. So interestingly, so we evoked, we're family. You're familiar with these mitzvahs. Man nishtanenu. Why are you singling us out from all other nations and languages? There are some nations that did not develop their own language. And it should not be, they're almost, sometimes Chazal say, if a nation does not have their own alphabet and their own language, it's not even a nation. It's an important thing for a nation not only to have its own sprach, but even to have different oisias. So why are you singling us out? Sha'atem goizrim only on the Jewish people, gezeres rois. The Rome then they were the superpower. They didn't do this against other religions. And we succeeded, ubitlum. Now, when did we hear the Psura Toiva? On the 28th of Adar, and V'oisa hayoim asur yom tov. So that's the kasha. It's gavaldik. Beautiful question. So the Gemara gives two answers, great answers. Answer number one, Amar Abaye, loy, nisracha elo l'chaydesh mu'ubar. You're right that in the vast majority of times, Adar only has 29 days. Chevra, nowadays, Adar only has 29 days. Rosh Chodesh Nishan is a 1 day of Rosh Chodesh. But in those days, it could be that Adar is going to have 30 days. Rosh Chodesh is Aleph. The 30th day then was not Rosh Chodesh. So if Megillas Taanis only would have written from Rosh Chodesh until the 8th, if Megillas Taanis would not have written Rosh Chodesh, in a 30-day month, yes, day 29, L'Rabbi Yossi, is asur to fast, but not day 30. It says Rosh Chodesh to also prohibit 30. Pasha. The answer. L'chaim. Rav Meir Rabbi Yossi. Rav Meir holds like this: the loyal his ano, according to Rav Meir, doesn't answer not lefanav, not la'achrav. Rabbi Yossi takes it a notch up. Loyal his ano answers lefanav, not la'achrav. Now, where it says the loyal mispat, which is more a greater yom tov, not even to eulogize, let Rav Meir it chaps the day before, but not a day after. Let Rabbi Yossi before and after. So first, the Gemara proved that this Megillas Taanis follows Rabbi Yossi before and after. Now we have a problem. Why does it have to record that the Yom Tov of establishing the Tamid from communal funds is Rosh Chodesh ad the 8th? Why does it have to write Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is a Yom Tov d'oraisa. The answer is Taka, but since it also chaps the day before, so to include the Yom Tov the day before, it writes Rosh Chodesh. Problem is that it says 28th. The 20th of Adar is a Yom Tov, and according to Rabbi Yossi, the 28th chaps the day after. The day after is the 29th. The day 29th is Taka, the day before Rosh Chodesh. Nowadays. So the Gemara Abaye says, not always. The 28th would grab with it the 29th. If not for us also writing Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then the 30th would be a day in which people will be allowed to fast. But until Megillas Taanis was bottled, the 30th is a day in which you are not allowed to fast. Answer number two, Rav Ashi Amar.
If you're not going to be able to know that it's Ma'ubar until it's the 30th day. So when the day 29 comes, you're going to think it's Erev Rosh Chodesh. And you're not going to know that it wasn't Erev Rosh Chodesh until it's already Erev Rosh Chodesh.
So Shuki is asking a great question, that since before the morning came, people needed to presume that it might be Rosh Chodesh. So anyways, there were not a lot of fast. Anyways, they would not fast. So let me just go back to one of the things that we learned in the sugya of Taina Shois, and even Abchizda. Remember, even Abchizda, who limits Taina Shois, what was his example? There are times that people, they just don't eat in the morning, not because they wanted to fast. They woke up, they were busy. Then at chaps midday, and they say, you know what, I already fasted half a day, and I owe God a couple of fast days. Let me make it into a fast. Couldn't they do that? And by midday, they would already know By midday, would they already know for sure that they will not become Rosh Chodesh? It could be. They will know. Because we also learned in Rosh Hashanah that it's not only about the seeing of the new moon. That if there was reasons, communal reasons, like if the roads were broken and they wanted to give another day to fix the roads, they were allowed not to accept the Eidim. So if someone is witnessing in the Beis Din that no matter all the witnesses saw the new moon and they're making the witnesses, they're asking and asking until they get confused. So I, as an observer, will know they're not making today Rosh Chodesh. And I fasted anyways. Let me make a tiny choice. That will be an answer. Okay, but good question. Rav Ashi Amar. Even normally, the other normally is chaser. Still, here we're learning a nuance that we did not have until now. Even according to Rabbi Yossi, what does Rabbi Yossi say? That where it says the loyla mispad, lefan of ula achrav asur. What is asur? You know what's asur? Kol shela achrav, only betainis asur. But behesped mutar. We keep on saying it chaps the day before and day after. For what? So even according to Rabbi Yossi, that a holiday also takes within it, for a holiday, the day after, it only prohibits fasting. But you could eulogize. So if someone passed away on the 29th or they're being buried on the 29th, if we would only have a record of the 28th day of Adar as a minor holiday, I would know you can't fast, let Rabbi Yossi, but you can eulogize. Even according to Rabbi Yossi, the Isra is only on fasting. But if there is a day that's in between two minor holidays, because the 29th is in between two holidays, it's in between the 28th, and it's in between Rosh Chodesh Adar, not Rosh Chodesh Nisan, not because of Rosh Chodesh, because Rosh Chodesh was the miracle of the Talmud. Then you can't even eulogize. That you can't even eulogize. We have to move. Amar Mar, we learned above again. The first holiday that we learned on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis was Mitamanya Beva Atsoif Moyado. Itoisav Chagad, they established the Yom Tov. I'm sorry, from the 8th, the second holiday, from the 8th until the end of Pesach, we established the holiday of Shavuos. Established meaning we determined that it's not always going to be on a Sunday, and therefore the Loy Lemispad. Now we have the final question. The 8th, isn't the 8th already part of the first? Rosh Chodesh until the 8th. Hello? So why do you have to record the 8th? Right from the 9th day. Because the 8th day was already included in the first holiday of the Talmud. V'tamanya gufa aser da'havale yoimedi toikem beit tamida. Simple answer, Chevron. Simple answer is like this, is that during the times of the second Beis Hamikdash, these minor holidays, don't think that once they were fixed, they stood. If something happened after the Yom Tov, something the opposite of good, from our perspective, they were mevatel it. And I'll tell you more than that. Since it wasn't a one-day holiday, it was like here an 8-day holiday. If they would have written from the 1st until the 7th without writing the 8th, it would have been a 7-day holiday. If anything would have happened on any one of those 7 days, which would have been a calamity, they would be mevatel that entire holiday. So they wanted to write Rosh Chodesh to the 8th, va'ad b'chlal. They wanted to write from the 8th until the end of Pesach. So if something were to happen in the first Yom Tov of 8 days, and they would have nullified that, which could have happened, at least they wanted for the 8th to remain a holiday, because the 8th is also connected to the next group of days. If something would have happened, something what we would have perceived as bad, and we would have nullified the 7 days. We're writing 7 days because the question was, it should have said from the 1st until the 7th. So he's saying, if it would have said that, we would have written from the 1st until the 7th, but Tamanya Gufei Asur, we want for the 8th day to remain a Yom Tov. So if something would have happened, we only will have notified 7. We cannot nullify the 8th, because 8th is also part of another Yom Tov. Because it's considered the first day connected to the holiday, which is when we established the holiday of Shavuos. Now says the Gemara, now I have another answer. That all of these days written in Megillas Taanis we knew it might be nullified. What was the kasha we had before? If it already said the 28th of Adar, why do you have to write Rosh Chodesh Nisan? That's another answer now. I know the 29th is the day after the 28th, but they were never certain if the 28th day would stay forever. So that's why they wanted to write Rosh Chodesh. Even the Ilu Mikla Milsa, if something would have happened on the 28th. So therefore, Esrem Batisha Gufei, they wanted that to always remain a day in which it's usher to fast. You know why? Because it's the day before the first day of Nisan. Very good. So now coming back, we have this machlekes in the Mishnah between Rameir and Rabbi Yossi, like we pointed out a few times already. Rabbi Yossi is one notch more chomer. More chomer means in a happy way. He extends the Yom Tov more. Who do we paskin like? So Itman, Rabbi Chia bar Asi Omar Rav, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi, greater celebration. Shmuel says halacha ke Rabbi Meir. What's halacha ke Rabbi Meir? The loy lihis ana, bein lefanav bein la'achrav mutar. The loy lemispat lefanav asur ula'achrav asur. So Shmuel is like Rav Meir. The Gemara says, how can you say that? Umi Omar Shmuel hachi ve'ha tanya. Rashbag Omer Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, if you would look in Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis by the two dots in the end of the narrow lines, the Brisa writes that twice, not once, the loy lihis ana behoin, the loy lemispat behoin. By us, it's mamish in the beginning, in the first wide line. The Megillas Taanis writes the words in them twice. It's not necessary. It's coming to say only in them, but not on something else. There's some type of exclusive word. Says Rashbag loimer lach that only those days are minor holidays. Shehein asurim lifneim ulachreim mutarim. Rashbag is even more lenient than Rabbi Meir. Rashbag holds that none of the days in Megillas Taanis has any effect on prior nor post. And Shmuel says, halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So how can you tell me that he paskins like Rav Meir? And the Gemara gives a very important answer. Shmuel had a tradition that we're going to be very lenient in Megillas Taanis. Lenient means that it doesn't affect, but Shmuel is an Amoira. So up until he learned this Braisa, the most lenient opinion was Rav Meir. So he says, I paskin like Rav Meir. Then he heard Rashbag. Oh, I paskin like Rashbag. Me'ikara Savar, even the Leka Tana, the Mekel Kerav Meir, he didn't know anyone yet that is even more lenient, so he said, I like Kerav Meir. But even the Shemo'i L'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, that's what the Bach had, the Mekel Tvei. So Amar Allah Kerav Shimon ben Gamliel. Back to this general question. We paskin like the Tanakama, Rav Meir, do we paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Another Shita. V'chein, Amar Bali, or Bali, Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Here we're machmer. Halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. This is like Rav. Frek the Gemara. Amalei Rabbi Chia labali asberolach. Let me clarify something to you. That ki Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. Another nuance. We had in our Mishnah two arguments. We had an argument, Rameh Rabbi Yossi, Deloy lehisano. We had another argument, Deloy lemispat. Says the Gemara that Rabbi Yochanan only said halacha ke Rabbi Yossi on the case of Deloy lehisano. That what? What does Rabbi Yossi hold? That lefneim asurim, la'achreim muter. But where it says Deloy lemispat, actually Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rav Meir. Let me say it differently. Rabbi Yochanan holds that all of the days in Megillas Taanis only affects the day prior. Never affects the day post.
And only Lisanoah also.
No, both. By Deloy lemispat, he does not paskin like Rabbi Yossi, which means it's only going to be Asur Lefanov. Deloy lehisana, Rav Meir says even Lefanov is mutter. Here is where he says Rabbi Yossi. No, it's Rabbi Yochanan consistently says no matter what lashon is used, Lafanav Asur, La'achrav Mutter. Fragt die Gemara mi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Allah Kistam Mishnah. Let's get a little bit of a tam of the next Masechta, Megillah. What are we going to learn in Megillah? That Megillah Nekreis, right? 11, 12, 13, 14th, and 15th, meaning that for either if you live in a place where there's no minyan, and we'll learn other reasons sometimes, not that much known, that even though that theoretically you should have celebrated Purim on the proper days, which is on the 14th or on the 15th, but you can bring it back. How far back? Max to the 11th. So we learned in the Mishnah Megillah that we may. Magdimin means, advance means, we go back, just to get it clear. This is all the Mishnah Megillah. What's going to happen, my friends, that if I really should have celebrated Purim on a certain day, which is either the 14th or the 15th, we're going to clarify. And for a halachically valid reason, I read it earlier. What's the status of that day? Am I allowed to fast on that day? You can say, no, you read the Megillah. Or you can say, no, you read the Megillah because you had a heter to read the Megillah early, but it's not the Yom Tov. So the Mishnah says, you still are allowed to make a hesped and to fast on the day in which you read the Megillah. Now, what's the case? Let's work this out. We'll see how all this is a Stam Mishnah. Stam Mishnah, Rabbi Yechanan says, we pass on like a Stam Mishnah. We're going to try to prove that this is not like Rabbi Yossi. How? The Amos, exactly what is the case? If it's speaking about people that theoretically should have read the Megillah, should have celebrated Purim, including reading the Megillah on the 15th, and they moved it back. You can always move it. You can only move it back. You don't move it forwards. Guys, one thing is clear. The people today in Yerushalayim and HaKodesh, even though they celebrate Purim on the 15th, forget about reading the Megillah. They may never fast or eulogize on the 14th. In other words, there is a little bit of a Yom Tiv for these and those. 14th and 15th are Yom Tovim regarding no one is allowed to make a hesped, even if you're not reading the Megillah. Umi Shari, can someone who should have celebrated everything on the 15th, forget about them moving it back. They may never eulogize or fast on the 14th. For Ksiv, it says, when Megillah Taanis, it says in Megillah Taanis, that the 14th day and the 15th day is Yom Puraya Inun. It's days of Purim, the Loila Mispat Bahoin. Let me ask you a question. Megillah is part of scripture. We just said Divrei Kabbalah is Nach and Megillah and Esther. Why did they have to put in Megillah Taanis Purim? They didn't put their Pesach because it's part of Tanach. And the answer is, that's the answer. That if without Megillah Taanis, you would have thought that someone who's celebrating Purim on the 14th, maybe can fast on the 15th. Someone who's celebrating on the 15th can fast on the 14th. They want to say this point, even without reading it. V'amar Rava, that why is it written in Megillah Taanis? It's needed Elo le'eser es shel zeh bo zeh ve'esh shel zeh bo zeh. So therefore, that's not the case in the Mishnah Megillah. Elo, therefore, it must be the case is. Let's work it out. We're going to through means of deduction. We're going to go through every possibility. B'nei Beisar, right? And they were allowed to read the Megillah when Chevra on the 13th. On the 13th, v'karolei b'tleisar. And what is the Mishnah saying? That yes, that they can fast on the 13th. It can be. Because we're going to introduce in a moment, there was a Yom Tov called Yom Nikneru. We're going to see soon what's that Yom Tov. It's not the Nikner from Yuma. Nikner here was a Russia. And he had a downfall, and we make a celebration. So the 13th is anyways a Yom Tov. Ella, let's go backwards. So, okay, B'nei Beisar, you normally would have read the Megillah on the 14th, but it was the scenario where you ended up reading it the Monday or Thursday prior was on the 12th. No, 12th is another holiday called Yom Teruah Yanusu. We're going to learn today, God willing, what that Yom Tov is. And therefore, Yom Teruah Yanus does not allow for you to fast. What's the case in the Mishnah? Elolav, the only case left is the Karolei Bechadesar. You read the Megillah on the 11th. And that is what the Mishnah is writing. Mutar behesperu b'tainis. Now let me ask you a question. According to Rav Meir, it never chaps lefanav nor la'achrav. Good. But according to Rabbi Yossi, it chaps lefanav. And we said, even with the emendation, always chaps lefanav. Lefanav is the day prior to Yom Teruah. And you are allowed to fast. And that's a Stam Mishnah. So this Stam Mishnah is like Rav Meir, that the days that are written in Megillah Taanis doesn't affect, not even the days prior. So, and Rabbi Yechanan should have followed his rule, halachik is Stam Mishnah. Simple. So the Gemara says, no, it's not a kasha, because I'll tell you, b'nei arba asur, The case, let's go back. The case was that you live in a city that normally you should have read the Megillah on the 14th, which is normally the case. The villages are normally people that should have read it on the 14th, but they were allowed to be anticipated. When did they anticipate it to the 12th? Guys, what did we say? What is the 12th? Not day prior post. The day 12 is a Yom Tiv in Megillah's Taanis, Yom Turiyanus. So I want you to know, like we learned today on Amud Aleph, don't think that all of the days in Megillah's Taanis stood even before we nullified Megillah's Taanis. That was the Machlokes by the Churban Abayis. Some days were taken out. The answer is Yom Turiyanus Gufei Batule Batlu. Now, hold on. What's the kasha? Say it by heart. What was the other Yom Tov we just learned now? Yom Nikanor. In other words, Yom Nikanor is on the 13th. Again, the day prior. And once again, and why did we nullify the Yom Tov that used to be on the 12th? Hoyel v'nehergu boy Shmaya v'Achia Echad, the brothers Shmaya and Achia were killed. Rashi writes over here, I don't know what this story is. Let's go on slate. So it's good to remember. No. Kihom. And I'll prove it to you. Kiha, the Rav Nachman, once he made a gozar tanisa betresar. He made a fast on the 12th day. What's the 12th day, Chevra? Again, what used to be Yom Turiyanus, Amrulei Rabbanan. So the people told him that the Yom Turiyanusu, how can you do that? And he responded. Now, when did Rav Nachman Yitz live? Rav Nachman lived, Chevra, after the Churban. So if you remember, not everyone said that Batal Megillas Taanis. The people who challenged him did not accept that when the Churban Habayis happened, Batal Megillas Taanis. So you have to keep it. So he told them, no, Yoim Turiyanus Gufei Batuli Batlu. Why? Because of this event. But the Gemara is not happy. Even if the case in the Mishnah Megillah is that they read a tak on the that they read the Megillah on the 12th, and the Chiddush is even though you read the Megillah. But since Purim is on the 14th, you can fast. How can you fast? It's the day prior to Yom Niknat. And if we would paskin like Rabbi Yossi, the day prior is also Asr, not the Hesped we learned now, but Asr B'Tainis, V'tei Proklei, Davalo Yom Shalifnei, Nikanor. Answers the Gemara, Omar Ravashi, Hashta Ihi Gufei Batluhu. Once they annulled the Yom Tiv, the minor Yom Tiv of Yom Turiyanus. So if it was a holiday, and then you say this holiday is out, Mishum Yom Niknar Nekam v'Nigzar, doesn't make sense. No, it's the Yom Shalafan of once you nullify that day, not Yom Shalachar. If that day itself, if a calamity happened, it doesn't make sense for us to, even according to Rabbi Yossi, to prohibit the concept of Shalafanov.
There's a holiday you can be dancing like you cannot fast.
So Rav Shlomo is making very good points, but let's go weiter and let's learn the two stories. So what happened? My Nikanor, my Turiyanus, the Tanya, and all this is written in Megillas Taanis. Nikanor, who was this Nikanor? He was Echad mi Ip Rache. I hope I'm reading this correctly. Yevanu. He was. They had these names every time you read a governor, a policeman, an officer. He was some Kanaker by these Greeks, and he was a big Russia. And Hoya, comma, he used to lift up his hands towards Yehuda and Yerushalayim. And he would say, Mamish like Goliath, when will this city fall in my hands? And I will trample on it, which is a lashon with feet. So what he was using his mouth, he lifted up his hands and he was looking forward to trampling on Yerushalayim. So and we came to him. And one thing is not written here, I don't know why, we cut off his head. Not only did we cut off his head, that's not written, but also we cut off the thumbs of his hand and the big toes of his feet. And we hung all of the head with the thumbs and with the big toes on the gates of Yerushalayim, and we then said that the mouth shahayim medaber begaiva. Versteht? That's why I'm adding, because the mouth doesn't say anything about the mouth, because they cut off his head. V'yodayim shahayim anifes al Yerushalayim, and the hands that he used to lift up against Yerushalayim. Again, I don't know why that's not written. And he was using the words that I will trample on Yerushalayim with my feet. Te'asa bohem nekama, and they made a minor Yom Tov called Yom Nikanor, which was on the 13th of Adar. My Turiyanus says the Gemara Amru that Keshabikesh Turiyanus was a shtickle king or a big governor, and he wanted to kill Luliyanus and Papus brothers in the city of Lutkia. Here, Rashi reminds us what happened. What happened over here? Whenever Chazal speak about Harugei Lud, and Chazal say that Harugei Lud have the highest place in Gan Eden, no one is able to reach their level. I'm reading inside the Rashi, the Yesh Oimrim, 15 lines before the bottom of the Amar Rashi. This is what happened. That Al Bitoy Shel Melech, there was a princess. Shenimtze is Haruga, that they found her murdered. And tragically, as it happened too often, that the Jews were blamed. But which Jews? All of the Jews of that region. Va'amru haYehudim hargua. So what happened? The Gazru Gezera al Shaneim Shal Yisrael. So this Russia made a Gezera that what? I'm going to kill all of the Jews of this region. So what happened? Amdu Elu. Who's Elu? These two Yidden, Luliyanus and Papus, they were tzaddikim. Rashi writes they were tzaddikim gemurim. The reason why Rashi writes this is because they did not say so themselves, but they were tzaddikim gemurim. Upadu es Yisrael, they redeemed all of us, they saved all of us. How did they do that? Amru, they said, we killed her. Anu hargenua. And the king accepted their confession. And v'harag hamelech le'elu bulvad. And what did they do? In other words, they were makriv their lives to save the community. Now, why is that a Yom Tov? Let's go see what happened. Let's go back in the Gemara. And all of that happened in the place called Lutkia. Okay. Amr lahem. Now, they confessed to the crime that they never did. But before they were killed, Amar lahem, this Turiyanus told them, Im ma'amoy shel Chananya mishol v'Azariah atem. If you are indeed the descendants of Chananya, Mishol, and Azariah, then Yavoy Elokeichem v'Yatzel Etzchem Yadi. Then let the Jewish God go and save you from my hands. He was mocking us. Kederech shehitzel es Chananya, Mishol, v'Azariah, from the hands of Nebuchadnezzar. So Amru Loi, so these two Yidden that died al Kiddush Hashem told him, they passed away, that Chananya, Mishol, v'Azariah, since they were tzaddikim gemurim hayu, that's what they said. No, we're not. Since they were tzaddikim gemurim, number one, v'ru'uyin hoyu le'asais lahem next, they merited that miracle. Number two, Nebuchadnezzar melech hogayin hoya. We're not saying that he wasn't to Russia, but he was the legitimate king, and therefore v'ru'uy le'asais neis al yadai. Imagine, in other words, Nebuchadnezzar also had the schus that through him trying to kill them, he brought about the miracle. He deserves that credit, at least because he was a melech hagoin. And however, v'oisa Rasha, they had guts, they had courage. Meaning you Turiyanus. First of all, you're a hediot. They told him that you were not duly elected. However, they told him they told him that your rulership is not legitimate. And the einoi ro le'osais neis al yada. Number two, v'anu nischayavnu. What's the abach hariga lamakim? They told him that we are not righteous. That's why Rashi writes that no, they were righteous. They just said that there should not be a chilul Hashem if a miracle doesn't happen. Anu v'nischayavnu hariga lamakim v'im. And then, no, what they told him is that once a Jew is chayiv misa by the rules of God, they're going to die anyways. We're going to get killed anyways. If you won't succeed in killing us, there are many messengers that God has. There are many bears, there are many lions. So once, and they went on to say, the only reason why God brought it about that we should be killed through you, not because we deserve Misa anyways, is because God wants to punish you. So God wants to add to your culpability, which is a paradox, because if they deserve death, which they didn't, but in such a scenario, we don't say That's the whole point that Rambam makes, that since the Yidden had to go into Golus, so the Egyptians are off the hook. God never told the Egyptians that they should do to what they did to us. Even aside of that, they did it even more. The whole idea of Ashgacha Pratis and Bechira Chavshis, that's here in the Gemara. It's a paradox. And you're going to get punished. They gave him that. The Afal became, after he allowed them to give this talk, Hargon Miyad, he immediately killed them. So 1 second, so why is that a minor holiday? First of all, just to know, the fact that they only killed these two and everyone else was saved, that's their credit, but that's not why they made it into a minor holiday. They made it into a minor holiday because Amru, that Loizozu Misham, while this was happening, when everyone was gathered and everyone witnessed these two Yidden get killed, Al Kiddush Hashem, Shabo the Yufle Meroimi, officers came from Rome, Upatsu Esmoiche Begizren, and this Russia, Turianos Taka was a hedyot, and he did something illegal, and they came and they split his head open with clubs right then and there. So everyone witnessed not the miracle of them getting saved, but the words that they said, that the reason why you are the one doing it to us is because Hashem wants to take vengeance in you. That happened immediately. That's a Golus Yom Tiv, but it was a minor Yom Tiv. Let's finish the page. What's late? So we learned in the Mishnah that Ein Goizrin Taanis al Tzibur only, Batchila only on, you don't begin doing it on Thursday. Remember that? Elo Ein Goizrin Taanis B'Rosh Chadashim. Right? Chanukah and Purim. But then the Mishnah says, once a series of fast days commenced, and it happens to be that one of the subsequent Mondays or Thursdays is Rosh Chodesh or Chanukah and Purim, then, remember that? Then we had a machlokes. Whether you fast the whole day, but it's different. First of all, what does commencing mean? Machlokes. When do we say, it already commenced, and now Rosh Chodesh doesn't exempt you from the fast? Machlokes. Rav Acha says once you already went through 3 fast days, which is Bahab, Rav Asi Yama, no, even if one of them, says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Oimer, so the Tanach says that once you began the fast, you fast the whole day. Hold on. Rabban Gamliel says, the end of the Mishnah. Rabban Gamliel says, no, you don't fast the whole day. You fast, but Vinochvi, it's Rosh Chodesh. You break your fast, we learned that Rashi the Mishnah, before Shkia. You don't finish the fast. What's the halacha? Rav Yehuda Amarav Zu Divrei Rav Meir She'amar Mishum Rabban Gamliel. That you don't finish the fast. Taka, you fast almost, not that you break your fast in the morning. That's what the Rashi we learned in the Mishnah. But you before Shkia, you break your fast. Aval Chachamim Oimrim, you do finish your fast. Misane umashlim. Misana umashlim. Look inside the last Tosfos in the Perek. Perish. Had the kopasak halacha misana umashlim. Only on Rosh Chodesh. Can't be Chanukah and Purim. The Chanukah Purim ain't yachal lisanis. You can't say that the Chachamim say you fast ever on Chanukah and Purim. Back in the word. Darash Mazutra Mishmei Rafuna Halacha Misane umashlim. Misane umashlim. Not like Rabban Gamliel. I just want to, so first of all, Hadan and Allah, God willing, we're going to come back to the say the Taanis Ketzad, like we mentioned today already, that the third Perek will begin to contrast, unlike fast days related to drought, where there is a gradual progression of the severity of the fast days. Remember the Yechidim, then you have the first 3, and then the middle 3, and then the final 7. There are other types of calamities which Chazal interpreted those calamities to be of immediate danger, worse than the lack of rain. And there, if they would impose a Taanis Tzibur, Shmuel says in Babel, they never had that koyach, but when there was a Taanis Tzibur, we right away went to the more chamerdika ones. That will be the new Perek. But before we move on, I want to say one thing. We learned the soul daf today about Lefanav and La'achrav. All right, and even Rab Meir in our Mishnah, and not Rashbad, that we found in Abraisa, holds that where it says the Loila Mispad, at least Lefanav, you cannot fast. What's the big question? Taanis Esther. And I'll go more than that. We read today that they put him in Megillas Taanis. The question is, why did they have to write it one on the other in 14? So it's very important to know, and Baruch, going back to fast days, that The fast of Esther is different from all other fast days. It's actually considered a joyous fast day. Notice there is a certain element, because Baruch was asking, how can you say the fast day of Yom Kippur? Yes, it's connected to tshuva. Yes, it's connected to tshuva. The point is that it's a mitzvah. The fast day of Esther is not connected to tshuva. It's connected to celebration. Now, how only a Jew, how is fasting celebrating? I don't know. Maybe because then when you make a l'chaim at night, that has a greater punch because you're fat. I don't know but it's a simcha. With the whole kasha, why is it called the fast day of Esther? Why is it called Esther didn't fast that day? We know that she met the king Pesach time. These are the big questions. The Rebbe's word is that when Jewish people go to war, the people who are not at war have to fast. When the people went to war on the 13th, the war was on 14th, the only Jewish person that fasted was Esther because she was the only Jewess not at war. Everyone else, because they're at war, they're eating. But anyways, it's considered a whole different type of fast. And the fact is that we have Taanis Esther. And we always had Taanis Esther even before Batal Megillah's Taanis. We'll leave it at that to be continued.
So what was the content of Megillah's?
The content